Good day, everyone. Welcome to Virtual Concert Halls, broadcasting live from Vienna, Virginia. Our online broadcasting platform is dedicated to streaming live performances and panel discussions. We connect musicians with their audiences and with each other. We are an independent virtual stage for classical musicians, educators of all instruments and music related disciplines, for music promoters, supporters of music and musicians, and music lovers. Our guests join our programs from their own locations around the world. They bring and share their musical gifts, their expertise, their personalities, their dreams. We present our guests' opinions, and we hope that our audience will benefit from hearing different and maybe sometimes conflicting points of view on classical music, music aesthetics, business, and other topics which we raise throughout our programs. Welcome. Today, we are presenting our next episode of Music Works, series of panel discussions created in collaboration with Polyphony Arts and the series author, Katie Beardsworth. Join us every Monday and Thursday at 8:30 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. Polyphony Arts is located in the United Kingdom. Music Works series is designed to bring together people who are currently working tirelessly on putting our solutions to the challenges of closed concert venues and other challenges. Katie's guests are musicians, music producers, administrators who are making strides towards moving the performing arts and music education forward. You will hear opinions and practical advice on how you can bring your own music community together, keep it viable and productive in this difficult time we live in.
Hello and welcome to Music Works, a podcast by Polyphony Arts. We're talking about the future of the classical music industry with some great guests. Thank you for joining us. Hello, welcome to Music Works, a podcast by Polyphony Arts. I'm Katie Beardsworth, and this week we're talking to Ella Jarman-Pinto. Hi, Ella.
Hi, Katie. Lovely to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. Ella is a film and TV composer, and we've been working together for a while now on various projects, including writing the music for this podcast.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to talk to Ella today about various things to do with podcasts and composing in general. So where do you want to start? Shall we start by talking about... So Ella has also recently started a podcast.
Yeah.
It is absolutely amazing. It is definitely my favourite podcast that I've ever listened to.
Wow, that's so kind of you. That's like so kind of you.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's called Beyond the Chameleon. And do you want to tell us a bit about it, Ella?
Yeah, so Beyond the Chameleon is one of those ideas that you get in your head that you can't get out of your head. And it's like you can find your feet walking towards the cliff edge and you don't really know why you're keeping going in that direction. But hey, you need to go in that direction. That's basically this podcast for me. Just absolutely driven to create this podcast. And it's called Beyond the Chameleon, Conversations on Belonging in the Creative Media Industries. And the first idea for it came when I read the statistics of female composers in the TV and film industries. And well, I think it was film for this one. Basically, really, this person had really kind of created a very succinct list of the stats of women in the industry and female composers, which is like down there. And basically, I was furious. I was absolutely furious. I was thinking, like, what is the point? What is the, I don't understand why women aren't in this industry, because women in this industry, women in the world are 50%, and women create incredible music. And if you don't know their music, then you need to know their music. And if you know their music, you need to hire them. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Indeed.
I mean, there's no, are you female? Can I work with a woman? It's like, just blah. Anyway, so that was my first sort of indication of, yep, okay, this is, similar to the rest of society, that, there's this pay gap, gender gap. But then also I read Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly, and I just basically had my mouth hung open for the entire thing, going, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. Oh, I get it. Oh, I get what's been going on for for the entirety of my life. And at the same time as reading this book, George Floyd was murdered and Breonna Taylor was murdered. So Breonna Taylor is my catalyst. But in no way do I feel that George Floyd should be, a lot of people say, oh, he's not the right person to look at because he was a criminal. Nothing to do with that. This man's life was taken away in the most brutal way possible, in public, filmed on TV, and then that image was distributed around the world for people to watch, and people who are consistently oppressed to watch someone like them being murdered. Does not matter about his record, does not matter at all about who he was.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's what he represents. But Breonna Taylor, for me, is the woman who died before him, the woman who was murdered before him. I think she was either a nurse or a paramedic, and she was basically murdered in her bed, in her own bed while she was sleeping, by police who were in the wrong house, and they then found out that they already had their suspect in custody. So it's just horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And I was brought along with the wave of Black Lives Matter. I really was. And I realized how much I had been hiding behind. I grew up in a white society. I grew up in the northwest of England. It's predominantly white here. I grew up being asked if I was a tourist, or, you don't belong here. But because the situation around me and where I live made me think that I did belong, because I did relate to other people in a way that I felt I could relate to them. But then they were turning to me and go, but you don't relate to me because your skin's a different color. Whereas I'm not looking at my skin when I'm looking out of my eyes. I'm just being me. But I found that I realized that I had really been hiding, and, I'm more outspoken than most of my friends, but still less outspoken for who I really am. and I have lost friends before. I've certain friends who we were talking about, the oppression of women through society, and it was me against the rest of the room, and I was like, well, I don't need to talk to you again. Walked out, never came back. But so Brené Brown really enabled me to realize the power that I have inside, and the way that we need to have these conversations. We need to bring this out into the open. It cannot be a secret anymore. It has to be something we talk about, because people are being murdered. Whether that's Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, whether that's kids being killed on the swings, whether that's kids being killed as they walk home from the sweet shop, Trayvon Martin, whether that's women being stoned to death in, I can't remember the exact example that I'm thinking of, but that is happening every single day in countries around the world. Women, Black people, trans people, LGBTQI people are being killed all the way around the world, and we're acting like it's okay. And for me, I'm there going, the only way to change this is to have the conversation. And I want to have the conversation in the TV and film industry because that's the industry I'm in. And it's also the industry that has such a huge amount of power. And if we can get people to have those conversations and bring those conversations in front of and behind the screen and post-production, you know, and as a composer, I mean, like, you know, there is the selfish side to it too. I want to be involved.
Of course.
You know, but if we can have those conversations, then things will change. It's only by feeling the fear and not having those conversations that people are oppressed and that things don't change. So yeah, so that is like the real heavy nitty gritty, you know, reasoning behind this podcast. And I have to say, in the 6 episodes that I have recorded so far, I have learned a huge amount. I've spoken to Shabnam Rezai, who works with Big Bad Boo Studios, or who, sorry, is a co-founder of Big Bad Boo Studios. And she does 2D animations for children and makes sure that there is really good representation. It's not just representation of a token child who is a different ethnicity. It's representation of their entire families, their beings, their you know, the decorations. I've spoken to name's gone on my head. It's ridiculous. Mandisi Subanda, who is a young filmmaker, young director who's founded his own productions, Manchester Productions, and he is doing his own thing. Basically, he's like, I've just finished university. My goal is to win an Oscar, and I'm owning that, and I'm doing it. And it was just really inspiring to listen to his goals and his dreams at the beginning of his journey. I spoke to Olivia Dickinson, who works in inclusivity and about encouraging the representation of genders equally. So not pink for a girl and blue for a boy. And she really pushes that forwards. And she was involved in the Let Toys Be Toys campaign as well, which was like really interesting for me before I had kids. I was like, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Aki Shiku, who is a BAFTA award-winning director and creative director of the Department of Image, who, I mean, we just solved the world's problems in an hour and a half. It was amazing just talking to him.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, and then finally, I'm wondering if I've done 6. I'm trying to think if I've remembered everybody. Finally, I just spoke to Aral C Productions, which is an all-female team, and they're just hit their fundraising target to go out to, I can't remember the country, but to go out and to basically talk to sex worker unions about how COVID has impacted the lives of sex workers who do not have any workers' rights. And so it was just, I mean, we ended up talking about periods and period pain. And it was like, you know, I was sort of sitting there going, am I sharing too much? And then I also thought, well, I would love to hear this. So we'll just keep going.
Absolutely. So Ella wrote the music for this podcast and has written the music for her own podcast and writes theme tunes, jingles, and other kind of pieces of music for media like that. Is that the best way to put that? I suddenly got halfway through that sentence and went, what was I saying?
Film and TV is what I'm saying, because you're supposed to niche, so.
Okay, yeah, so film and TV, but has branched out into podcasts for the purposes of this. And a while ago, when we first planned to do this, we did a Facebook Live, which is still available, in which we discussed on video. We kind of had like the initial consultation about the podcast music, and since then we've basically had like 1 or 2 other chats about it. So most of the process of this music being written has actually been done live for you because it is such an incredibly complex process, and you know, I have had somebody ask me why I was commissioning music for this podcast, because it's, I mean, a podcast kind of theme or whatever is just a few seconds of music. I think 15 is kind of considered the maximum, really, or the approximate, you know, for a podcast intro music. And so anyway, we're going to now talk about, we've done it now, obviously. So we're now going to talk about what that was like and you know what you need to know if you're going to commission music. So,
Oh,
so the conversation we had, I really enjoyed that conversation we had
so did I.
about sort of what it was going to be like. Because my fear as a commissioner was that I was going to be asked to send you some examples of things that I liked, and I was like, oh God,
Yes.
I could never do that.
Yes.
I never know what I like, you know, and so on and so forth. And then, but yeah, anyway, it turned out not to be like that at all. So why don't you just
No.
remind us what what
Yes.
that process is like for you?
It was asking you lots of questions, basically.
Yeah.
Finding lots of different ways around asking you kind of what your hopes and your dreams and your fears and everything was with this, and out of it, kind of like just what I get is I just get this blossoming kind of like, oh, I could do this, oh, I could do that, oh, and we ended up with this picture which I can actually send to you, and you can, if you want, you can put it somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not that interesting. It's just like a little scribble, but
Definitely.
basically said how I thought we could do this podcast and music, and the initial concept, which is very different to the final version, but the initial concept was this kind of big kind of explosion of sound, and then Katie's voice in the middle kind of weaving its way out, and then lots of different instruments kind of coming round, and this very orchestral sounding interweaving of melodies and ideas, and then all converging on Katie's voice at the end. And it didn't happen like that, and I had a lot of worry actually that it wasn't happening like that. When I was writing, I was like, this is not what I said it would be. I'm like feeling very upset about it for me, and feeling a bit guilty as well, but
No.
but actually when I but actually sometimes what happens with the writing process, and this is from the composer's point of view and not necessarily from the commissioner's point of view, for me, I usually just need to get loads of stuff out my head. Like I'll write 3 or 4 different versions, sometimes up to 10, 12 different versions, and just get loads of just stuff out of my head, and eventually there'll be something that the commissioner just goes, that I like that. And this is exactly what happened with us, isn't it? Because I sent you something and I said, well, you know, the melody is quite catchy. I'm not sure about it, but the melody is quite catchy. Let's see what you think. And then I tagged this little piano thing on the end, and you listened to it and you're like, yeah, it is catchy actually. But that thing at the end, I love that thing at the end. Can we do something with that? And I went, yeah, all right.
And it's so funny because that the thing at the end
Yeah.
is actually what we've ended up using as like the main like introduction to the podcast as like that. So and the other, and I'm jumping the gun a bit here, but I realised I've not actually mentioned that. So I thought I'd just mention that. I think I just got the first like finished like cut of the sound with the video. We're in uncharted territory for me here, as you could probably tell. And so I think that's what has been gone for, because it's just and so yeah, the other stuff felt so like what I wanted it to be, and then when I heard it, I was like, I didn't know this is what I wanted. But this is what I wanted.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, you know, we were in my writing, when I was writing it, and I was just thinking, well, this is a great idea. This initial orchestral idea is a great idea, but I don't have an orchestra, and you are you are a professional person within the music business. You cannot have horrible synthy sounds doing this for you. This is the whole reason why you're commissioning. So and you know, there are certain things you can get away with using sampled libraries, and you know, there are certain things you can't get away with because they just sound awful. So that's why we went in the different direction. And what I found really interesting, what for me found really interesting as part of the back and forth between the two of us, was that I mean, I'm going in 2 different directions with this, so I really want to talk about that scary bit.
Yeah.
I work in a space that has a gamelan orchestra, and there were a couple of gongs in the office. I was like, let's just pick that up and let's do some stuff with that. And then Katie had sent me her voice and I kind of messed with it. And I was this is all experimentation. I have no issue with someone just turning around going, no. And I was quite pleased with it. And I showed it to my mum because she works in the office just above me. And so I showed it to her and she was like, oh, it's really nice. Yeah. And like in this kind of space where I was working on it and thinking about it and experimenting, it was like really incredible. And I really liked what had come out of it. And then I showed it to my husband, and I'm assuming I can't swear, right?
I think you can probably swear.
Okay. Right.
It's part of the story.
Yeah. It's part of the story. And I showed it to him when I got home, and I was like, Jeff, look, this is what I created. And he just listened to it, and he looked at me with a frown and went, Ella, it's creepy as fuck. And I went, what? It's creepy as fuck. It sounds like the soundtrack to Hereditary. She can't use that for her podcast. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're true. Oh no. And I sent you an email at like 11:30 at night going, ignore that one. We're not going to use that one.
Honestly, I cried with laughter for like an hour. Because I just feel like, because what I've been doing is because I have a real problem with trying to. I've never done a podcast before, and I think trying to work out what I actually like, what this is going to be like. And
yes.
At the point of recording this interview, we still haven't launched the podcast, so I still don't actually know what it's going to be like to go on to like Spotify and see my artwork and hear my like theme tune essentially and all of that, and I just can't. I still can't really picture it. So I'd been sending it to my team. Like the things that you'd been sending me, and I'd been going, what's your view on this? Because I like to get a bit of context. And I'd sent them that one, and one of them had gone, "Oh, it's a bit scary," and I was trying to work out what to say about it. And just then, as I was thinking about it, I got that email, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, thank goodness for that."
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, we've been working together we've just passed our year anniversary. We've been working together for a year now. And it's, you're able to I was able to just email you, go, no, it's wrong. And that's what's just so lovely about working with someone who you have that good working relationship with, and you know that they'll forgive you for it, and that it's not going to be a black mark against your career, and, it's not going to make a big difference. And what was really interesting is that coming out of that wrong section, there was this kind of pizzicato bass and drum pattern that was kind of offsetting itself, really driving forwards. And I thought, well, I really like that. I want to play along with that. And I sent it to you with kind of like some piano. I don't know what I was doing. I was like, just got to get something done. I have to pick up my kid. It's like the worst timing ever for me, but I've got to pick up my kid in like 10 minutes. I just got to get something done and sent off to Katie. And like, I like it, don't worry, I'm not sending you rubbish, but like,
I totally get it. We have to be honest about these things.
Best creativity comes in pressured environments. But and you came back and said, I really like the direction of I like where it's going. So from this terrifying, scary, creepy as fuck place came this, something that actually ended up being one of the last things that I sent you.
Yeah.
But what I found really
still in it as well.
The gong was still in it. Yeah.
I was like, definitely got to have a gong.
Yeah. And then I sent you, and you said, oh, it's great, but I think it needs to be shorter. So I shortened it and I changed the little, I got to get something in it piano, made it slightly less manic, and actually synced it a little bit more and made it so it wasn't out of time. And, and you came back to me and you said, no, don't like that. I really don't.
Yeah.
Go in a completely different direction. And I feel like what I recognized with that was that it felt like for you'd panicked listening to it. And then I panicked with your response. And then when we got together and really looked at the very minute elements of it, that actually it was just this tiny bit of piano that had changed. And just that slight change in energy and that slight change in energy totally destroyed the feeling for you and made you go, no, it doesn't work at all. Whereas when I moved it back to that slightly manic, I gotta pick up my kid, it had a different energy, and you said, yes, let's use this. And obviously that then moved towards the logo, and that then also influenced the logo. The gong, there was so there was a gap between this pizzicato bass and then the logo piano section, and there was a gap there, and you were like, well, it still doesn't fit, so we increased the gong to kind of fill the gap and move it as a crescendo towards this piano bit, and that then became the end logo, including the gong. So all of this thought process, all of these mistakes ended up moving towards that. Well, all of that journey, you had to go through that in order to get what you are now presenting as part of the podcast. So for me, it just absolutely encapsulates how I work, because you have to be willing for the composer to make mistakes, and I have to really try and understand your visceral reaction to what you're hearing. That's actually, you didn't necessarily want me to change everything I was doing and start again. But it was like, it was this thing of how can we communicate with each other to get what we're trying to say. And in the end, it took an hour of us basically talking like this, me showing you lots of different versions and you going, oh yeah, that's better. Oh yeah, okay. And like this understanding between the two of us of what was going on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was really bizarre actually for me to hear. What you did was you played the first. You talk about these two versions, the one that I liked and then the one that went to that I didn't like, and you played them next to each other. And you said, and we did it a couple of times, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely what I think. I think the problem with the piece of music that lasts a few seconds is that you're sort of like, maybe I don't think that, maybe it's just past, But I was like, no, definitely, and the difference was incredibly subtle. And as you said, like from your, from the composer's side, it was almost negligible, and yet somehow the impact was enormous. And when you think about that in the context of like a film score, the detail and the level of work and the level of understanding of what you can do with the sounds and the instruments and the music and what impact that can then produce for a listener it is the ultimate of kind of complex, detailed skill. I nearly said niche, but I don't really mean, I'm not sure about the word niche, but like seriously kind of specialized.
Yes.
And I think that's something that I really wanted to come out of this conversation, was to make absolutely clear that anyone listening knows how much work it is to write 15 seconds of music.
Yes.
Because how long do you think, I don't know, maybe that's not a good question, how long it took, or like, yeah, it's because it's more about what it took, how much understanding it took.
Yes. I would say that it took probably of work. And this is a sort of slightly different situation to what I would do if I was working with someone I didn't know, or working with someone in a kind of, well, can I say it, a paid situation? We did it as a swap.
We did it as a time swap.
It was a time swap. So, in that situation, I would have a very clear framework, because they don't trust me like you trust me. I don't trust them like, that like I trust you. I had to be able to trust that in the time frame that we have, that it takes a lot to come back to you and go, I really value what you are hearing and your response to it, but I think that actually this is what's happening. Yes. And I was really grateful that you were able to listen and then go, oh yes, you're right. Whereas sometimes you get those situations where you go, I don't think you really can see what's happening from where I am versus what you are experiencing as a consumer. So so that almost compressed everything. So I think I spent about 3 days total on it, but that was over a period of 2 to 3 weeks, and I think I probably spent maybe a month with it going around my head.
That's the thing, because the thinking time.
Yeah.
I find that with my work as well, in a very different way, but because it's not creating a piece of art, but I definitely feel that there are pieces of work that I do that they just percolate, and that is actually that has to happen. So
Yes.
a very, very clear idea about the way forward might not be possible on the Tuesday, but it is really easily possible on the Friday, for instance. You know, it's definitely
absolutely
part of it.
Yeah.
But even so, and even given the fast track nature and the prior knowledge of the relationship, 3 days to write 15 seconds of music is probably outside of people's expectations, I would say.
Yeah. See, I think it's quite a short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, it's still, and I was surprised at how obviously, as you say, I work in music, but I found the process surprising in the sense that I hadn't expected. I sort of hadn't expected the impact of what I was hearing to be so difficult for me to understand, given that I understand music quite well. So I definitely benefited from and needed you knowing what was going on in my head.
I think there was a point where I was like, I really don't want to patronize you, but
no, this is the problem. We can imagine how easy it would be to do work if we all just did it and just all knew that we were all doing. Because I was terribly worried about saying things that would be upsetting or I thought loads about what I said in terms of feedback, even though you were sitting there going, just give it a rating out of 10, it's fine. And I was like, no, could possibly.
But it's almost that, it's this thing of when I the last film person, that doesn't work, does it? The last film director I worked with, who had directed and produced her own documentary, and absolutely fascinating documentary. And when we worked together, I had to be very clear with her. I turned to her and I said, you need to feel able to work with me in a way that you need to be able to tell me the things that feel most terrifying telling me. You need to be able to tell me that you hate what I've done with that visceral reaction. And if the worst thing is when someone is trying to be kind of a roundabout, oh, I'm not really sure it's all right, but can you maybe possibly change this? I'm not getting a clear response. I'm not getting any direction there at all. I'm like, I don't know. Where if someone says, I hate this, please never show it to me again. It's like, fine.
That's clear.
And, I have no emotional connection to what I've written. I mean, if it's really great, I might be sneaky and get it underneath somehow, I'll make it work in a way if I really, really, really like it. And I did push some things on you, but I also said, if you hate it, you just tell me. And it's almost easier than someone trying to be kind. I mean, obviously, you don't be like, you're a fool, I hate you, don't work with me again.
Let's not get personal with it.
Nice with the criticism, but be very clear with the criticism, because that's the fastest way to get results. Because my job is to create a piece of music that makes your heart sing. That's my job. It's not to make my heart sing. I can hate the piece of music, but you love it. It's like, fine. I'll be in that situation. But
I was going to say, I don't know many composers that regularly write music that they end up hating, even if it's not what they had in mind in the first place. I think the other thing I wanted to say about absolutely. I think the other thing I wanted to say about this process is that when we had our initial conversation about this on the Facebook Live, it was I wasn't expecting that none of the questions that you asked me would actually be about music really at all. And then when you explained that, it made perfect sense to me that none of those questions would be about music. And what was lovely about doing that together at that point was that basically I'd only just decided to do a podcast, and then I was like, well, I'm going to need some music. And with my music industry brain, I was like, let's get that sorted. And then I was like, obviously I'm going to ask Ella, because why would I not? And then we have this conversation, and actually it basically acted as like a total, almost like vision boarding exercise for my podcast in general. And it really clarified for me what I wanted my podcast to be. And then I thought that was kind of emulated again in the process of actually writing the music, because it's like you said, we came up together. I mean, you came up with, and I agreed with, this idea of the big sound and then the voice coming out of it, and that's to sort of signify the the messy nature of the music industry, and you know, then, you know, clearly my voice coming and sorting it all out, maybe clearly that's what's happening at the moment. And then that didn't turn out to be the way it went. And again, we've got this great piece of music which will get used, I think, within the podcast for which is like this more kind of driven pizzicato strings and bass line kind of section, and I literally love it, and it totally encapsulates the thing that I wanted it to, which is being driven and being sort of like forward thinking and forward moving. But in the end, that piano logo, which I meant to ask you to explain what a musical logo is, and I haven't, but maybe we'll do that in a minute, that you wrote, that I didn't ask for at all, turned out to be the thing that spoke to me the most about what I actually want this podcast to be like. Because although I want it to be forward thinking and forward moving and progressive and motivational and all those kinds of things, actually what that piano piece says to me is something about inquisitiveness and space and a bit of beauty. And those things weren't really in the original brief.
No.
But somehow they were actually, you did them and then I liked them, and that was I just think that's like really amazing.
It's all a process. That's the thing. It's all a process. And I think that I would have come up with some completely different music if I'd have written it straight after our conversation, which, you know, sometimes you go, I did have a week there. I could probably have done that. Like, I had done
but
that.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I mean, really,
yeah.
all the things I could have done in my life if I'd been slightly more organised and known what I know now.
Yeah. But what was interesting was that, you know, that didn't happen, and that music didn't happen. And actually, yeah, we needed all of that process. And you know, in the way that I would work if I was to create a logo for somebody else, is that I would work with them over about 4 weeks and do it where I would give them maybe 6 to 8 different versions. You know, we'd had the same conversation that we did in the Facebook Live. I'd give them maybe 6 to 8 different versions. They choose, I think, what was I saying? 2 or 3 out of that. Next week, do a couple more versions of those 2 or 3. They choose maybe 1 or 2 if they really can't choose. And then the next week, you know, so it's like, it's still going that process. You still have to get all of those options out there and find what might someone viscerally responds to. And we did it like that, but over a very short period of time, but also extended over a long period of time. So it was really, it's interesting in that way.
It's very interesting. I think what do you call them? Music audio logos or musical logos?
I call them sound logos.
Sound
for TV,
logos,
they're called idents, and I'm sure there are other names out there for them. A lot of people don't really know what a sound logo is. I've got your sound logo in my head, actually. It's basically a very, very short, sometimes just 2 to 3 seconds, probably 6 seconds max, piece of music or sound that is basically attached to a brand and attached to maybe videos or adverts. You'll find them in adverts. So for those who are British based, they might know that, oh no, I'm not gonna, can I do promotion for the...
Oof, no idea. Maybe you could retrospectively let them know about it and ask them to sponsor it.
You know, like you know, there are
but we can all think of examples, I think, can't we? Of like,
you know, there's a certain fast food chain. You know, so a certain fast food chain, they have it where they you know, they started off. Actually, it's quite long. They started off with a call and response, and you know, they had a questioning little melody, and then they had an answering little melody. And now what they've done is they've got rid of the answering melody, so they have the questioning melody, so they know that you will automatically do the answering melody. So it actually involves that interaction, and which means that they stick in your brain. Basically, that's all it is. It's about sticking music in your brain. I know about, you know, a certain yogurt but you know, has a little vocalized
Yeah.
thing. Maybe everyone knows what I'm talking about. And you know, certainly, I mean, I know I could probably say Intel Inside. Everyone go, ding, Intel Inside. These things that you grow up with, and you think about this music, or you think about that, and you sing it. That's what a sound logo is.
Absolutely.
It's about hooking their product in your brain musically, which which you know can feel manipulative, but all music is manipulative, so it depends.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Whole other podcast topic right
Whole
there. But it's interesting. I think that branding, visual branding, is something that many businesses, or certainly smaller businesses, don't really know that they need until they have it. And audio branding, similarly, I think is it's not in the forefront of people's minds as to how powerful it can be.
No, it's so subtle. It's so subtle. Everyone's gone, what is a sound logo? And I've gone, well, this is a sound logo. And they've gone, oh, yes, I know what a sound logo is.
Yeah.
But they
Oh,
wouldn't,
yeah.
you know. So it can be a very, very powerful branding. And it's what I've used in my podcast because, like, for me, I was like, I want to write a piece of music that is all mine. And this piece of music is going to stick in people's heads. That's
Yeah.
my goal for writing a piece
Your
of music.
podcast theme is in my head all the time, almost as much as Postman Pat. I'd certainly much prefer it. I'm not going to lie. Oh dear. Well, thank you for explaining that and for going through that process with me. I'm really just thrilled that that I have this music and that we've worked on this together and that we've been able to talk about it and kind of shine a bit of light on this for people.
Me too. It's been wonderful working with you. It's been really cool.
Oh, it's always wonderful working with you.
I'm panicky, being like, I can't let Katie down.
Oh gosh.
I think that's probably where the scary music came from. Like this kind of, I've got to get it right.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway.
Oh no, not at all. It's such a pleasure to work with you and so much appreciated. So I think we shall probably wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming and talking to me. It's been really lovely to chat.
And you as well.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening today. To find out what we're up to, do join our mailing list or follow us on social media. And if you'd like to support the podcast by buying me a coffee, you can do that on buymeacoffee.com. Thank you so much. See you next time.